teams in this week's AP poll: undefeated South Carolina, Ohio State, Texas, Stanford, and Virginia Tech. USC is 7th. A couple of troubling stats the Lakers need to address in a hurry if they're going to make the playoffs. The Lakers have ended the first quarter trailing by double digits 13 times this season. They were down by 17 after the first quarter at Phoenix on Sunday. The Lakers are also the only team among the top 10 in the Western Conference with a losing record on the road. The Lakers are 11-19. They've got some serious work to do over the final 23 games. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Climate is king.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that caring for the community means caring about the climate. You might have heard that we announced a pretty bold 12-month, $2 million campaign to do 4 things. Increase climate literacy, turn up the volume on communities of color in the climate conversation, connect everyday people with the resources they need to survive and thrive, and highlight frontline climate justice crusaders of color throughout this year. KBLA Talk 1580 will be bringing you insightful interviews on all of our shows to help raise your climate IQ. Each quarter this year, we will also be hosting free climate events in various communities throughout the city with food, fun, and forward-thinking conversations. Thanks to partners like LADWP, Metro, Caltrans, the Sierra Club, the California Community Foundation, the California Endowment, AQMD, MWD, and more. You'll also be hearing more about a couple of national town halls broadcasting live from Los Angeles, to which you will be invited. And we'll be rolling out a robust social media campaign on all our platforms, as well as an outdoor media campaign, all designed to educate, enlighten, and empower you in our fight for climate justice.
We want cleaner air.
Caring about the community means caring about the climate. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that we really can change the world if we care enough. 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 If we care enough.
I was with Ziggy Marley a few days ago, and Ziggy tells me that this movie about Bob Marley is pretty amazing. Of course, he's an EP on the project, so what else would Ziggy say? I love Ziggy, and I ain't mad at him. I haven't had a chance to see this yet, but I'm anxious to see the Bob Marley film. Miles, you seen it yet? You haven't seen it yet? Okay. So Miles hasn't seen it. I haven't seen it, but we got to check this out. I hear it's a pretty decent film, and wonderful way to celebrate the life and legacy of one Bob Marley, who sounds as good now as he ever did. So I gotta go check that out. I'm Tavis Smiley. Glad to have you hanging out with us today. What a great first hour. And this hour promised to be just as good, and we still got a third hour in front of us. Marsha Warfield, a brilliant comedian, been around a long time, and you recall Marsha playing the role of Roz on Night Court back in the day. Well, Night Court is back, and so is Roz, and so is Marsha Warfield, and she'll be back in this studio in our third hour today. So in our next hour, Marsha Warfield joins us live in studio. Look forward to seeing Marsha. Haven't seen her in quite some time. She's iconic as a black woman comedian, been out there a long time. So there are a lot of other folks whose names we know these days, but Marsha was there many, many years ago. And just glad to see her reboot as Roz on the new version of Night Court. Two conversations in this hour. On the backside of this hour, Troy Andrade, professor of law at the University of Hawaii, Manoa, on an interesting case that's made national news that involves the use of the indigenous word aloha and HBO's The Wire. Issues that came up in an interesting case regarding gun control, a state Supreme Court case. That's pretty interesting. It's been making national headlines, and if that doesn't make any sense, don't worry about it. He'll unpack what it all means on the backside of this hour. But for now, I'm pleased to have as our guest Dr. Marije Chukwu-Marije. Dr. Marije Chukwu-Marije. I've been practicing that all day. I think I got it halfway right. Did I do halfway okay, Dr. MJ?
You did just all right. You got it.
Okay. I've been practicing Dr. Marije Chukwu-Marije. I love that name, man. Now I can't stop saying it. Dr. Marije Chukwu-Marije. Everybody just calls him Dr. MJ, and I appreciate you because of the work that you are doing. He is a brilliant and renowned cardiologist, and I'm delighted to have him on in this half hour. Why? Glad you asked. Because while February is Black History Month, it is, and we celebrate that, and that's a beautiful thing. I still ain't figured out how we chose the shortest and coldest month of the year to celebrate such a rich heritage, but it is what it is. So February is Black History Month. We all know that, but it is also American Heart Month, and I'm just bold enough to try to connect Black history and Black hearts and see if we can make some sense of this and address the issues that I want to share with you right now. So a couple of quick stats, and then to frame this conversation, then we'll jump right in with Dr. MJ. Black Americans, this won't surprise many of you, are way more likely than others to develop high blood pressure, diabetes, and obesity. The risk factors, of course, that lead to heart disease and stroke as we celebrate February as Black History Month and American Heart Month. 47% of black adults have been diagnosed with cardiovascular disease compared with 36% of white adults. That number is pretty arresting. Almost half, 47%, almost half of black adults have been diagnosed with some form of cardiovascular disease. I mentioned earlier high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, but that almost half of us have been diagnosed with some form of cardiovascular disease. Ought to be embarrassing, humiliating. I certainly find it insulting, and we can do better. Let's just call it what it is. African Americans are 30% more likely to die from heart disease than non-Hispanic whites. So we're just not diagnosed at higher numbers. We are 30% more likely to die from heart disease. And black women, get this, black women are 50% more likely to have high blood pressure as compared to white women. 50% more likely black women are to have high blood pressure as compared to white women. So don't ask me why I'm having this conversation. You know why I'm having this conversation, because those numbers are arresting. And if we can celebrate Black history, I say all the time that we celebrate Black history today because somebody did something yesterday. And if we don't do anything today, there is no Black history to celebrate tomorrow. But if we ain't here tomorrow, then what does it all mean? Why does it matter? And so this is a conversation about saving black lives so that we can continue making Black history that we can be proud of and that will honor the lives of black babies yet unborn. So there's the stats. Dr. Marije Chukwu-Marije is standing by to unpack all this for us. So when we come forward, we'll dive straight into our conversation with Dr. MJ on Tavis Smiley.
This is getting good. Yeah, man. Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Girl, I have a secret. When I get stressed out, I get sweaty. That's why I use Secret Clinical Antiperspirant. It's like my own secret weapon. For 72 hours, I get Secret's strongest protection against sweat caused by stress, heat, and activity, because you know how crazy life can get. Plus, it's made with advanced odor fighters that don't just cover up smelliness. They help prevent it from happening in the first place. Believe me, if I weren't wearing Secret, I'd be a hot, smelly mess. Thankfully, Secret works.
LADWP is proud to partner with KBLA to share with you how to start the new year without bill worries. We're here to help if you're behind on your bill or need help staying current. Sign up anytime online for Level Pay to set predictable monthly payments throughout the year, including for past due amounts. You can also check out the special extended pay arrangements of up to 48 months to help pay down your bill. If you're a senior or income qualified, you may be eligible for Easy Save to receive discounts and also qualify for free and discounted energy and water saving devices. You can get up to $15,000 for past due water and or sewer bills and up to $3,000 for electric bills. But you gotta act fast. Funding is limited. You can reduce your past due bills and kick off the year right, because here at LADWP, we're here to help. Visit ladwp.com/cares today and find out more.
Hey, what are you doing up on the step stool?
About to clean these light fixtures. The whole family's coming over, and if there's even a speck of dust in the house, my abuela will find it.
Here, I got a Swiffer duster to help with that.
A Swiffer what?
A Swiffer duster. It has this cool extendable handle that reaches 6 feet to get high and low, with fluffy dusters that easily trap and lock dust.
So, no more step stool?
No more step stool.
Easily trap and lock dust from hard-to-reach places with the Swiffer duster. Love it or your money back.
Sounds different. Huh. This is Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Dr. Marije Chukwumarije, better known as Dr. MJ, as we talk about black health. I mentioned moments ago, in case you've just tuned in, that February, obviously, is Black History Month, but it is also American Heart Month. And while on the one hand, we enjoy the month of February celebrating our great and grand contributions to this country, the reality is that many of us are dying from cardiovascular disease. And so if we can deal with the first part, let's also deal with the second part. And Dr. MJ, those numbers, I mean, you know this stuff, you are a cardiologist, but when you hear those numbers, even though this is the frame that you work in every day, you hear what exactly?
Yeah, you know, it's always concerning to me and appalling each time I hear it, despite the fact that, you know, these numbers have been reigning true for some time now. And on the top of your segment, when you were reading those stats, you said exactly what we hear a lot, which is some of this may not surprise you. And that's a problem, that it doesn't surprise us anymore, right? Mm-hmm. The fact that heart disease continues to be the number one killer, not just in America, but the world. But it continues to plague African Americans at a much higher rate and capacity than it does anybody else. So, you know, that continues to be a bother to me, and that's exactly what I do, why I do what I do.
Mm-hmm. Tell me more about why you do what you do when you know, giving these numbers, to your point, we're not surprised, and you know that there's I haven't seen any real data, you know more than I do, but I've seen no real data in preparation for this conversation that suggests to me that these numbers are abating in any significant way, so that every day you go to work as a cardiologist trying to help black folk, you know you climbing up the rough side of the mountain, and yet you wake up every day and do it anyway. Why?
Well, if not me, then who, right? It's one way to frame that answer, right? When it comes to the medical workforce, we think about the disparities that exist in the number of black doctors and providers that there are to treat the many black patients that there are, right? We make up, black people make up 13% of the U.S. population, but when it comes to doctors, you know, we make up less than 6%. That means there's a huge number of black patients out there that don't often get to go into an office and see a provider that looks like them. And the importance of seeing someone that looks like them, we call that cultural competence.
Sure.
And cultural concordance, meaning that someone that's sitting across from you, they understand you. They understand your background. They understand your culture. They understand your family dynamics. They understand the do's and don'ts of what goes on in your household. They understand why you may feel the way you feel about certain treatments, medications, and recommendations that are given to you. They understand it because they lived it. They experienced it themselves as well as their family members. So I get up and do what I do every day because they need someone that's going to understand them, someone that's going to advocate for them. And hopefully inspire the next generation of Black doctors to step up and do the same.
No, I take your point. I'm a strong advocate, of course, for culturally competent care, cultural care that is considerate of who the patient actually is. I get that, and I'm an advocate for that. And yet I'm wondering, given what you just said, whether or not you think that an increase in the level of cultural competence that Black patients are afforded would in any way impact these numbers. I'm not so sure that I buy the argument. I'm not so sure you're making it, but I want to interrogate it anyway. I'm not so sure I buy the argument that just because we bring more doctors online, that automatically means that the heart health of Black people would be increased. I wish the solution were that easy, but you tell me.
Mm-hmm. No, I absolutely agree with you. That is absolutely not the case. Having more Black doctors is not enough by any stretch, because the most important thing that we need to talk about as to what these stats are, we need to talk about why these stats are the way that they are. And they're not just this way because there are not enough Black doctors. That's part of the reason. They're also this way because of the innate and the structural infrastructure that has existed for years, right? Structural racism has been something that has contributed heavily to the development and the progression of the disparities that exist amongst our Black people, right? When we're talking about the disparities and the way that they worsen these things called social determinants of health, right? I'm not sure if the audience has heard social determinants of health, but what that means is social determinants of health are conditions that affect the Black community. They're part of the reasons why it's harder for Black people to avoid some of these risk factors like hypertension, diabetes, and high cholesterol. So examples of that would be the neighborhoods that we live in, right? Black people are marginalized and placed into certain communities, and that then leads to these developments of food deserts where it's harder for us to get access to healthier foods. It's harder for us to get access to areas where individuals can just feel safe to go outside and exercise and be in their own community. It's harder for them to have to get rides and childcare to be able to make their doctor's appointment. So these type of structural problems are the reasons, a part of the reasons that have led to the disparities that exist. Yep. And the biggest thing I always like to emphasize is that it is not genetic. That's something that I tell my patients all the time. It's not a genetic issue.
Yep. There are a couple things you just said now that are worth unpacking. Let me start with the latter point you just made. I'll go backwards in a moment. When you say it's not genetic, I'm glad you say that, because you will hear a lot of our people. Let's just keep it real. A lot of our people, make an excuse of the fact that my grandmama had high blood pressure and my mama had high blood pressure, and so that is true. Your grandmama had it, and your mama had it, and you have it. So that part of the story is true. As we say, that part's true, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is genetic. I'm just wondering whether or not Black people, how might I put this kindly and generously and charitably, that Black people have bamboozled themselves into believing that this stuff is genetic because their mama and their grandmama had it.
I would say it's, without even framing it as Black people bamboozling themselves, because I completely understand where you're coming from with that. I do think that innately we have been conditioned to feel that way, because a lot of Black people go and see providers who tell them, oh, your dad had hypertension. Okay, well, that's why you have it. That is wrong, right? That is so wrong. And so you are completely right. I have so many of my patients, particularly my Black patients, that come and say, oh, yeah, well, my dad had high blood pressure, as if that just somehow miraculously means that they're supposed to get it as well. And so it is such a great point to bring up that just because your mom, your dad, and maybe your grandparents had high blood pressure, like you said, that's a fact. That does not mean that you are supposed to inherit it. That is a huge misconception. And the reason that ends up falling in line to where sometimes you do see the grandparents and then the parents and then the child have this disease is because the lifestyle is what is inherited. The lifestyle is what's conditioned in that family, right? So, there's a running joke sometimes where they say, a patient says, oh yeah, diabetes runs in my family. And someone's like, no, you have diabetes because no one runs in your family, right? Because the most important thing the most important thing is to actually condition and promote the lifestyle that we're supposed to build. That's heart healthy living. That's exercising, so that we as a family and as a community can make sure that we're living in a healthy way, not just relying on the fact that, hey, this is destined to happen to me. It is not.
Yeah. And I'm laughing because I thought my comedian was in the third hour today. I thought Marsha Warfield was. I thought Marsha Warfield, who plays Roz on Night Court, who's our guest in our third hour today, I thought she was bringing the comedy. And here comes Dr. Marie-J Chukwumarie, Dr. MJ. That is funny. That's funny. I mean, but I love. And let me just detour for a second, or pivot for a second, or pause for a second. I was just talking to Donnell Rawlings, great comedian. By the way, if you missed yesterday's conversation with Donnell, check out the podcast. Donnell had an amazing conversation yesterday. He is the third person for whom Dave Chappelle has produced a Netflix comedy special. The first was Earthquake, and then there was Lunel, and now there is Donnell Rawlings. Today, the 27th, is the day that Donnell's special premieres on Netflix. So it's a funny piece of work. I've already seen it, so I highly recommend it. So check out Donnell Rawlings today on Netflix with the premiere of his new special called A New Day. He was our guest yesterday. So we were talking about comedy yesterday with a particular comedian. We got Marsha Warfield coming up talking about the upcoming festival. Netflix is a Joke comedy festival coming up here in a few months. So here comes Dr. MJ though with his brand of humor. But I raise that because sometimes it is the humor that gets the point across. Is it not? It's the humor sometimes that we can relate to. No, diabetes don't run in your family. Nobody in your family runs. That's why you got diabetes. And so the point is abundantly clear. But sometimes a little humor makes it drives home a little bit better. Let me come back to something that is not funny at all, a point you made earlier that made me think about this, which is that if, in fact, there aren't enough African-American physicians, and we know that, then we are perennially going to be in this frame of talking about cultural competence and cultural concordance, just not enough of it because there aren't enough African-American doctors, which means, just follow my logic here, it means that we're going to be, for now and for the near term, black people going to see primarily white physicians. If they don't understand, or if they don't buy the argument that you made earlier about these social determinants of health, and I can guarantee you they ain't studied this in med school. They don't know nothing about it. They ain't never heard of social determinants of health in med school. It's not in their lane. They're not in that lane. So they don't know anything about that, and they're not accepting of that argument. They don't know anything about structural racism. They don't live in it. They're not subjected to it. They haven't studied it. They don't know anything about it. So if they don't understand social determinants of health, if they don't get structural racism, and we are perennially forced to go see white doctors because there aren't enough black doctors, I don't know how you arrest this, Dr. MJ.
It's an ongoing problem, and it's something that you'll continually see a lot of doctors, and I don't even want to say it's only black doctors, because I do like to say there are a lot of allies in the space who also recognize the problem and recognize that there's an issue there. But obviously, predominantly black doctors are the ones that are having to step up to continue to advocate for ourselves, but also for the different types of programs and opportunities that are going to lead to more of us into the space. And again, there's a real reason why, we talk a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how, these DEI initiatives continue to have, pros and cons. And that's an argument for a different day for a lot of people. But, currently there's this argument in the dermatology space. And, obviously I'm a cardiologist, and that's not my field, but there's been a lot of backlash because there are some DEI initiatives that have been discussed, and there has been a large support of removing these DEI initiatives by predominantly non-black dermatologists. But when you remove things like that from the medical field, then you continue to exasperate and exaggerate a lot of the disparities that exist. Specifically thinking in the dermatology field, do you know a lot of black patients have dermatological conditions and rashes and things that look differently on their skin than it looks on white skin? But in med school, we continue to learn from the white pictures and the white skin pictures and the way a white rash looks. So black patients often go misdiagnosed or underdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all. And so that's just a small example of why it's so important to have, again, concordant care and to have the providers that are going to be able to frame these conversations, specifically when it comes to cardiovascular health as well.
One of the ways to reduce the impacts of cardiovascular disease on Black people is to intervene before the risk of heart disease actually increases. I am not a physician. I don't play one on radio or television, and yet I've done enough of these conversations to know that so many of the maladies, the health maladies that Black people face, all comes down to one thing: early intervention, early detection. Is there any evidence that suggests that we're getting better, at least at that part?
You know, you need to go ahead and write for the American Medical Association, because you're right on point with a lot of things you're saying. It is you are taking the words out of my mouth, because I often have my tagline to my patients is that prevention is better than treatment. Right? We have so many people that do not want to take medications, and I am one of them. Let me tell people right now, I do not like prescribing medications. I know that there's this misconception that doctors get paid for prescriptions, or we get paid to kind of just push along medications and drugs. I have no benefit in doing that to patients unless it's beneficial for that patient. The thing I would prefer the most is to make sure that a patient never has to touch one drug, right? And the way we do that is by focusing on prevention, by making sure that we can identify conditions early enough, that we can make sure that we do the things in our life and in our diet amongst our community and family members to make sure that we prevent the development of any diseases. And if we do that, then we don't have to worry about treatment. We don't have to worry about medications. We don't have to worry about procedures and surgeries. But obviously, there are some conditions that are not preventable, or that despite your best attempts at prevention, you still may develop. And that's when medications have a role. But if we can focus on preventing these things by not only adopting those appropriate measurements, but also going out and getting your screenings, then you can catch things early enough before they ever become a problem, heart disease included. Yep. And we know that's even more important in the Black community.
Nope. That's the answer. That prevention is a whole lot better than medication or anything else for that matter.
1,000%.
Medication, amputation, any of those Asians, prevention is better than. We'll leave it there. He's cardiologist, Dr. Marije Chukwumarije, better known by his patients as Dr. MJ. I said at the top of this conversation that February, as we all know, is Black History Month. It is also American Heart Month, and I just thought it made sense for these 30 minutes to try to connect those two things, to weave those two things, and just make the point that we are a resilient people. We are a resilient people, but sometimes we fight fights we don't have to fight. We don't need to be fighting this fight of cardiovascular disease if we can prevent it on the front side. Dr. MJ, thank you for your work and witness. Good to have you on this program, my friend. All the best to you, sir.
I'm really appreciated. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, sir. Same to you. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Boeing is being accused of potentially retaliating against employees who report safety issues with the company's airplanes. The Federal Aviation Administration has issued a report that details a disconnect between Boeing's management and workers on safety culture. The report makes over 50 recommendations and calls on the company to develop an action plan to address all of the issues. One Maryland HBCU is asking for help to win grant money. Bowie State University has the chance of winning $150,000 in campus improvement grants from the Home Depot. Funds would be used to make improvements to the Prince George's County campus. You can vote online as many times as you'd like to. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Still trying to clear troubles as you travel mid-city. If you're taking that Santa Monica Freeway 10 west at Normandy, looks like a crash taking up 3 of the left lanes. Coming off the 5-101 is where we're seeing that busy drive, and then it's going to be tough all the way towards that 405. Sylmar, cruisers still working the 5 north as you get to the 405. It's the truck bypass that's shut down. They're doing some electrical work there. Commerce, a collision from earlier, wrapping up on that 5 north at Slauson. That's clearing from the left lane, but as far back as Rosemead, La Mirada, we are seeing the busy drive.
We've all felt the impact of rising food prices. For families in poverty, they're facing malnutrition and even death. You can feed a family for a month with your $50 donation to Compassion International. Just text the word radio to 97646.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
UCLA's women's basketball team got a key win over number 11 Colorado last night. The 8th-ranked Bruins won by 8 at Pauley Pavilion. Bruins guard Kiki Rice had 20 points, 9 rebounds, and 4 assists. The Bruins improved to 11-5 in the Pac-12. Top 5 women's basketball teams in this week's AP poll: undefeated South Carolina, Ohio State, Texas, Stanford, and Virginia Tech. USC is 7th. A couple of troubling stats the Lakers need to address in a hurry if they're going to make the playoffs. The Lakers have ended the first quarter trailing by double digits 13 times this season. They were down by 17 after the first quarter at Phoenix on Sunday. The Lakers are also the only team among the top 10 in the Western Conference with a losing record on the road. The Lakers are 11-19. They've got some serious work to do over the final 23 games. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. Recently, the Washington Post ran a major story which in sum reveals that racial discrimination in jury selection persists in America. Most often, the practice occurs through a legal tactic called peremptory challenge, which allows an attorney to strike a potential juror without having to state a reason. In the 1986 Batson Doctrine, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the use of peremptory challenges to exclude potential jurors solely based on their race violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. By the way, the late great Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall despised peremptory challenges. New data in the Washington Post story underscores that nearly 40 years after the Batson decision, the problem remains widespread. One study in the Deep South found that black jurors are being challenged and dismissed at double and triple the rates of other prospective jurors. Bottom line, it's racist, it's wrong, and it's pervasive, even as research shows that racially diverse juries spend more time deliberating, make fewer errors, and can result in fairer trials. One of the arguments in the Ninth Circuit appeal, brought by former LA City Councilman Mark Ridley Thomas, is about violation of that Batson Doctrine. In its case against MRT, the U.S. Attorney's Office struck black women from the jury pool based on demeanor and employment status, a clear violation of the law. A long list of high-profile black law professors, historians, and justice centers have now filed amicus briefs in support of MRT's position. But the irony of a black elected official who for more than 3 decades represented the best interests of his black constituents, having black women voters struck from his jury pool is repugnant and morally wrong. So much for being judged by a jury of your peers. MRT's legal team argues correctly in its filing that given well-established law and legal principles set forth by the Supreme Court, Ninth Circuit, and state courts and legislatures, the Ninth Circuit should likewise reaffirm and clearly state that applying facially neutral justifications in discriminatory ways to target black women and other protected groups presumptively violates Batson. I couldn't agree more. For KBLA Talk 1580, I'm Tavis Smiley. We welcome your comments.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like your style, though.
Ready to re-examine your assumptions and expand your inventory of ideas? More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
Let's keep it moving, pushing through this second hour of our program today. I am pleased to welcome to this program now University of Hawaii Manoa law professor Troy Andrade to tell us more about how the indigenous word aloha that we all know and a reference to The Wire, HBO's iconic series that we all know, were both used in a recent state Supreme Court decision on gun control that has made national headlines. A fascinating and interesting story, and I'm delighted to have Troy Andrade, Professor Andrade, on this program. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing really well here in Hawaii. Nice sunny day out here in the islands.
Yeah. Make us all jealous. I said to myself, maybe I should go to Hawaii to conduct this conversation rather than doing it on the phone. But that didn't work out. But I revel in the beauty that I can imagine, having been there a number of times, a number of islands. We all, of course, love Hawaii, and it's a delight to have you on this program. I'm not sure I could work in Hawaii. Let me just start with that. I'm not sure if I lived in Hawaii, I could actually go to work every day. I mean, I'd want to be at the beach laying around. So how do you motivate yourself to actually go to work every day, Professor?
You know, it's a struggle, but, things got to get done. We're not prone, we're not isolated from some of the challenges that the rest of the country is facing. And so it's really heartening to be able to be given the opportunity to educate the next generation of lawyers and advocates to really get the good work done that needs to be done.
No, but it's a beautiful thing. And you're right about the fact that no matter what state you live in this country, there are certain classes of people who wrestle and struggle with all kinds of issues, and somebody's got me on the front line helping to fight that fight, so I'm glad that you were there. That said, I'm going to pass the mic to you because you can explain this much better than I can. I just found it fascinating. I saw this story starting to make national headlines about Aloha and The Wire. I'll let you tell the story of what we're talking about here, and I'll interrogate once you lay the foundation.
Yeah, so in Hawaii, there's a lot of different unique laws. And so on the island of Maui, there was a criminal defendant who was charged with carrying a firearm and ammunition. And in Hawaii, we have fairly strict gun control laws and policies, and it's something that has been very much a part of Hawaii law even prior to the United States involvement in Hawaii. So in the Kingdom of Hawaii time, there were very strict laws regarding weapons and gun control policies. And so that has carried along, and with the United States Supreme Court decisions in 2008 and the most recent Bruin decision in 2022, there was a challenge to those laws here in Hawaii. And as you mentioned at the beginning of this month, our Hawaii Supreme Court made some waves by, to some extent, distinguishing our Hawaii state constitutional provision, sort of our right to bear arms provision, which is nearly identical to the federal Second Amendment, but distinguishing it on very different grounds and saying that our courts interpret that rule, that constitutional provision very, very differently than the current United States Supreme Court, and basically said in Hawaii there's no individual guaranteed right to bear firearms. And in fact, the court calls out the United States, our Hawaii Supreme Court calls out the United States Supreme Court for misconstruing, misunderstanding, misreading, reinterpreting history in order to meet its ends of including sort of an individual right to bear arms in the Second Amendment. Now, in Hawaii, aside from our constitutional provision, we have a statute that's called the Aloha Spirit Law. And everyone's heard that word thrown around. I mean, it's in all sorts of movies.
Sure.
In the law, it identifies what aloha means, and at its heart, the law says aloha is the essence of relationships in which each person is important to every other person for collective existence, right? Particularly as an island community where we're isolated, right? We're cut off from the rest of the world. You got to get here by plane or boat. Existing in a peaceful way is really, really important. And our statute, which defines aloha, implores our government officials, particularly our legislative leaders, our executive leaders, and all of our judges, to act in this notion of aloha, in acting in a way that ensures collective peace and harmony. And having people carrying around firearms in the public to this court is not going to be consistent with that aloha spirit.
Yep. So I get it now. Now, here's where the interrogation begins. How is it that the state of Hawaii, never mind how it views and defines aloha, never mind the fact that they see the Hawaii State Supreme Court sees this Second Amendment issue differently than the U.S. Supreme Court. But what we were taught, in our civics classes about the way the judiciary branch in this country works is that when the Supreme Court speaks, it is final. It is final. And that no state can do anything that is in violation of what the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled. And the Supreme Court, as currently assembled, has advanced all kinds of understandings and decisions about the Second Amendment. And the Second Amendment allows you to carry. In some states, carry and conceal. Everybody does it differently, but you do, in fact, have that right. So my question is, how then does the state of Hawaii come and say, well, based on how we define aloha, getting along, if I could just to paraphrase, getting along and in a space where we are all on this island, and we don't want people carrying guns, so we just see it differently than the U.S. Supreme Court, and they just then rule that you don't have the right to walk around carrying a weapon. How do you do that over and against the U.S. Supreme Court? Is my question.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'll respond in two parts. First, the aloha spirit is sort of the opinion is about 50 plus pages, and the aloha spirit is 2 or 3 paragraphs in that entire page. So there is a rationale that the Hawaii Supreme Court runs through in terms of constitutional interpretation. What this comes down to, I think, to my second point, is it's a balance in this sort of republic we live in, right? This notion of federalism and the powers between the federal government and the state government. That our court interpreted, our Hawaii Supreme Court interpreted the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling as providing an individual right to carry, but with some limitations. And so this is where our Supreme Court is sort of finding a way in to say there are limitations. Those limitations rest with the state to figure it out. And as you mentioned, there are some states that do allow, in their constitutions even, for people to carry and conceal guns in public. Hawaii is not one of those places. And so the court here is saying that the U.S. Supreme Court has left some leeway. That leeway, our Hawaii Supreme Court is going to interpret our Hawaii laws as a sovereign state to say, this is how we interpret it. Whether the U.S. Supreme Court is going to pick up this case and say you can't do that, I'm not sure.
Right.
But our court has been willing to say, at least here in Hawaii,
right,
if you're going to rely on things like originalism and looking at historical context of how these laws came into place, which is one aspect of how courts interpret the Constitution, right? Particularly nowadays at the U.S. Supreme Court.
Sure.
Our court here does that same analysis, more focused on Hawaii. And
says,
if we're going to look at that analysis, it's really different here in Hawaii.
No, I hear that argument. The question remains, though, and I want to probe it when we come forward. It seems to me that if the Hawaii State Supreme Court stands by what it has said publicly in its decision, and obviously, why would they not stand by it? If they stand by that, I can't imagine that Hawaii doesn't become ground zero for the NRA. The NRA is about to move to Hawaii. Not a bad place to work, as I said earlier, if you can get to work every day with all the sunshine, all the beaches. But my sense is that the NRA is about to make Hawaii ground zero. Because what they don't want is any state interpreting the way that the state Supreme Court in Hawaii has interpreted it, that opens up a Pandora's box. You take my point. We'll talk about it more when we come forward with Professor Troy Andrade, University of Hawaii Manoa professor, who's on Tavis Smiley right now.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley. Tavis Smiley. Ranked number 45 on the Heavy 100 list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do Black history every single day. In fact, as the only Black talk radio station west of the Mississippi, we are Black history. Our annual Black History Month luncheon is fast approaching, and we want to be sure to give you ample time to get your company, organization, church, or group to join us at this year's celebration on the last day of the month, Thursday, February 29th at noon. Last year, we honored iconic local Black media personalities, including Pat Harvey, Jim Hill, Mark Brown, Beverly White, Sandy Banks, and Pat Prescott, and raised $20,000 in scholarships. This year, we're honoring Black Hollywood creatives who have used their artistic genius as climate justice champions. At this year's luncheon, we will be showcasing and sharing their inspiring work on our big screen. Plus, a scrumptious meal, live music, great company, and lots of fun with your favorite KBLA Talk 1580 hosts. So contact us today at info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. That's info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. We hope to see you Thursday, February 29th as we close out Black History Month. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your Black.
City of Los Angeles tenants, get informed today about your eviction rights. Take immediate action if you receive an eviction notice from the court. You have 5 days to respond to an eviction notice or unlawful detainer. Don't self-evict. And you can't be evicted for non-payment of rent unless you owe more than the fair market rent for a unit your size. Learn more eviction information such as at-fault and no-fault evictions at housing.lacity.org. Be informed, be protected, be at home.
Who do you trust to get at the truth? Tavis Smiley. That's who. The conversation continues right now.
The short answer for me, Professor Andrade, is, if I understand what you're saying to me, that the Hawaii State Supreme Court has interpreted previous Supreme Court decisions about the Second Amendment in a way that restricts their decision in Hawaii, restricts just all out, carry and conceal, open carry. They've tightened the noose on that, as it were. They put some restrictions on that. My sense is, if I'm interpreting what you're saying to me correctly, speaking of interpretation, that Hawaii may be ground zero pretty quickly for the NRA, because they're not going to allow that to stand and allow other states to start, as they would see it, retrenchment on the Second Amendment.
Yeah, so just one caveat. I think the Hawaii Supreme Court is looking at the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution, and to some extent really being bold and calling out the U.S. Supreme Court for its misuse of history. But what it's really doing is interpreting Hawaii's provision that is nearly identical and saying, under our laws, you can't do that. Now, that being said, is it going to make Hawaii a target? I think it will. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think it does put Hawaii on the map. And I think to some extent, the court might be calling out the NRA and saying, bring it on to Hawaii. Hawaii is ready to take you on. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. But I will tell you, it's rare to get a unanimous Hawaii Supreme Court opinion. Mm-hmm. And this is pretty bold language that the court is using, especially when it's citing things like The Wire. It is a bold statement, I think, by a state Supreme Court. And I imagine that there are going to be other state Supreme Courts who are going to use this time now with the current makeup of the United States Supreme Court to really lock down and figure out how rights can be protected under state laws, how some of the things that are happening on the federal side, there may be analogous provisions on the state side that can be used to preserve some of the rights that some might argue are being clawing back at the United States Supreme Court level.
I guess the question is, we come forward in our remaining moments with Professor Troy Andrade, whether or not the state of Hawaii has found a way, my words, not his, to sort of claw back some ground in this fight about guns in this country. The NRA has been just call it what it is, quite successful at advancing their arguments, but it sounds like the state of Hawaii has found a way to sort of claw some of that back. And other states, as you mentioned a moment ago, may take their lead. If that, in fact, is the case, it's going to be on and popping, no pun intended, because the NRA is not going to stand for that. But maybe this decision will put the NRA on their heels once and for all in this country. We'll talk about that part when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Seeking the truth. Speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment. LA's 99 neighborhood councils form the grassroots level of the Los Angeles city government. The system was created to connect LA's diverse communities to City Hall. While neighborhood council board members are volunteers, they are also public officials elected to office by the members of their community. Neighborhood councils advocate on issues like homelessness, housing, land use, emergency preparedness, public safety, parks, transportation, and sustainability. They also provide local expertise on the delivery of city services to their various communities. Neighborhood councils are open to participation by anyone who is a part of the fabric of daily life in said community. This includes those who live, work, or own property or a business. If you are interested in stepping up to join your local neighborhood council, visit www.empowerla.org. That's empowerla.org. It's time to think globally, but act locally. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Some people just know the best places to eat around town. Those are the people who know to choose Allstate. They know exactly where to go to get exactly what you're wanting. They know where to find the spiciest hot pot, the gooeyest brownies, and the tenderest, most flavorful portobello steak. Those people also know that safe drivers save 40% with Allstate.
Saving 40% is based on the national average premium savings for all state auto customers with a clean driving record versus those without. Savings vary by state and vary based on how you buy, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
Smart talk for curious people just like you. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and University of Hawaii Manoa law professor Troy Andrade, who I'm pleased to have on this program for just another 3 minutes here before we get to the top of the hour, and shift gears and talk to Marsha Warfield, who was back as Roz on Night Court on television. I offered my assessment a moment ago, Professor Andrade, about what I think this means, that the Hawaii State Supreme Court has found a way to sort of claw back some of these so-called gun rights. I offer my sense of that, but you're the law professor, not me. What do you make of what this decision will do for the conversation, for the fight, if you will, about gun laws in this country, about gun violence?
Yeah, so I think at its heart, what it does is it does highlight the fact that a Supreme Court, a state Supreme Court, is willing to use the same tools that the U.S. Supreme Court has used to reinterpret a provision that is basically identical. I think it puts power back in the state courts. 50 years ago, I don't think that would have been a good idea in certain jurisdictions, but that seems to be the momentum where the courts are heading in this legal system we have. I think there's a reason that Hawaii has always had one of the lowest rates of gun violence, and that is because of our unique legal tradition of regulating firearms and ammunition in Hawaii. It doesn't mean they don't exist here. They are just regulated. And I think this is a clarion call. This decision is a call to other state courts to use their power as a sovereign to really ensure that whatever laws they pass are reflective of their community, right? And here in Hawaii, we just don't have a very strong tradition of having firearms, and that's something that our court has clearly put a pin on, and trying to make sure that our United States Supreme Court, I think, hears that message.
Yep, well, they've heard it, and the Supreme Court aren't the only ones who heard it. I heard it, and that's why I invited you on the program. And if the Supreme Court heard it, and I heard it, I can assure you the NRA has heard it. And so we will see. This is no laughing or joking matter, but we will see in the coming days how the gun lobby, as it were, in Washington and beyond, responds to this. But my sense is that we are about to see a new wave of activity on the part of the NRA, given what the state Supreme Court in Hawaii has now decided and ruled. We thank, for the moment, University of Hawaii Manoa law professor Troy Andrade for his insights into this. Professor Andrade, good to have you on. All the best to you, sir.
Thank you. You take care. Aloha.
Aloha to you. I love that. Marsha Warfield is in the house. We'll talk to her for the hour, in the next hour of Tavis Smiley.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Boeing is being accused of potentially retaliating against employees who report safety issues with the company's airplanes. The Federal Aviation Administration has issued a report that details a disconnect between Boeing's management and workers on safety culture. The report makes over 50 recommendations and calls on the company to develop an action plan to address all of the issues. One Maryland HBCU is asking for help to win grant money. Bowie State University has the chance of winning $150,000 in campus improvement grants from the Home Depot. Funds would be used to make improvements to the Prince George's County campus. You can vote online as many times as you'd like to. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Still trying to clear troubles as you travel mid-city. If you're taking that Santa Monica Freeway 10 west at Normandy, looks like a crash taking up 3 of the left lanes. Coming off the 5101 is where we're...
Families in poverty, they're facing malnutrition and even death. You can feed a family for a month with your $50 donation.